Hello and welcome to another Skyrim challenge video. Today's challenge is, can I beat Skyrim without leveling up any skills? So we begin this challenge at character creation. I decided to play Khajiit this time because I wanted to get the extra damage for your claws because it's the only way to attack other than using shouts. Then I decided to try to do the skip and I went with Hadvar. I ran through all of the combats, ignoring most people. I leave Helgen. I ran to Riverwood. While in Riverwood, I picked up all the cabbages that were on the ground because one of the very important things is you actually can still make food without leveling up any skills. So I was going to be used a lot to try to increase my health instead of using potions because I can't level up alchemy. So I ran over to Bleakfall Barrows. I just kind of ran through all the enemies and killed the final Draugr and took the Dragonstone and Unrelenting Force. I ran back to Lucian in the Riverwood Trader, gave him the Golden Claw because I wanted to make sure I was able to get some amount of gold for fast traveling with the carriage. I then went over to Whiterun and I couldn't enter the normal way because whenever you talk to one of the guards, you have to use Persuade, Bribe, or Intimidate, and if you try to, that'll level up your speech skill. So I then was like, I can pickpocket things, and if it's cheap enough, I won't level up my skill. So I tried that a few times, and then I have a really good idea. I realize I don't need to try to use the probability of lockpicking. I can just hit the guard, immediately surrender, and get taken to jail. Then just wait out my sentence. And using that, I got into Whiterun without having to do anything. I ran into Dragonreach, talked to the Jarl, and he told me to talk to the Court Wizard. I talked to the Court Wizard, immediately give him the Dragonstone, and then we hear about the next dragon attack. We go over to that dragon attack. I was trying to attack the dragon, but I realized that it wasn't very effective and I took a ton of damage because I only had 100 health because I can't increase it via level up, and I had no armor because I couldn't wear armor without leveling up. So I kind of hid for most of the time and just let the guards do most of the work. I then fast traveled back to Dragonreach. The Jarl told me to go to the Greybeards. I go over to the Greybeards like I'm told, their quest line, and then I go over to Ustengrav. In Ustengrav, I take the note. So then I take my current setup. I go over to Riverwood, talk to Delphine. She gives me the quest to go to fight the next dragon. I let Delphine do most of the work again, and then she realizes that I'm the Dragonborn. She tells me about the Thalmor Embassy, and I go there. I just run by to the first two rooms, as always, enter the final room, immediately crouch so that I'm stealthing. Then I sneak down to the bottom room, and this is when my stealth skill actually got far enough up that I was having to think about that, like as an actual problem. If I moved around too much when I was stealthed, then I would actually level up that skill. So my original plan was just stealth around and try to never get noticed, but because of that plan failing, I instead had to just, swing my claws at everyone, and I successfully killed the enemies, took the key, and went into the trapdoor. Then I fast traveled back to Riverwood, and I realized, I don't know when exactly this happened, because I don't have to search through my footage for when it happened, but at some point I killed the cultists in the Dragonborn DLC, and decided to wear their armor. And I realized about now that the helmet was heavy armor, and the gloves were light armor. And that's actually a good thing, because that shows that I can actually use armor quite frequently without ever leveling it up. So then I talked to Delphine about Esbern. She tells me to Riften, and I realized when I'm entering Riften, using the same method I used to get into Whiterun, getting arrested and then just serving my sentence, I realize that actually, since jail resets all your progress, I can now use stealth again, and all of my progress towards skills was erased, so I now have access to those skills again. So I used that later on to get more skills before the Alduin fight and before the Skull Dolphin. So I'm just saying that now before I forget. So then I go over to Riften. I go into the Ratway tunnels. I run by most of the enemies. I do take the gloves of the pugilist or pugilist. I don't actually know the pronunciation, but I take those gloves, which improves my unarmed strikes. And originally I didn't grab these at the beginning because I didn't realize the fact that I could wear light armor without it immediately leveling me up really quickly. I thought that it was going to be a lot fewer hits before leveling my skills up. So then I go into the Ratway Vaults, talk to Esbern, and we just kind of run by all the enemies and ignore the Thalmor people. I then go back over to Delphine, and I am told about Alduin's Wall. We go over to that. We learned about the Dragonrend Shout. So after learning any of the Dragonrend Shout, I stop at the Right Woman's Stables, fast travel to Winterhold, and decide to just pick up that Dragon Scroll now instead of going back later. So I talk to Septimus Ignis, go over to Aftland, and get into Blackreach, grab the Elder Scroll of Dragons, and then I go over to the Greybeards. They shout at me because they finally returning the Horn of Jurgen Windcaller. They ask about the Dragonrend Shout. I get called over to Parthenax. Parthenax tells me in order to do so I need to have a Dragon Scroll. I inform him that I already have the Dragon Scroll, and I summon Alduin. The annoying thing about this is that Alduin, for some reason, was invulnerable when I first summoned him this time. And I have no clue why. I think it might have had something to do with the fact I didn't leave and come back after talking to Parthenax. So he was invulnerable to my hits for the first fight. So after like 20 minutes, when I fully realized, yeah, no, he's just immune to all his attacks, I decided to load a previous save. I fast travel away, then I fast travel back over to there and re-go through the long Dragonrend cutscene, and I start the Alduin fight. Also, some hired thugs decided to follow me up to Parthenax, apparently, because I had to fight them during that. So for this fight, what I decided to do was spam food, because food, well, the best food is pretty much Wheels of Chi, dealing you 15 hit points, which is still worse than the worst healing potion. You can find a lot of food just out in the world of Skyrim. So if you pick up all the food you come across like I did, you can actually get a lot of healing. So I did that to get a ton of healing during Alduin's fight, and I didn't run away from him ever. I just spammed food whenever I was low on health, and so I defeated Alduin. And then I killed the hired thugs because they didn't die from Alduin, apparently. Then I learned that I need to play in the Peace Council. Luckily, I could avoid any options that used like Persuade, and I didn't level up my speech skill at all. I then go over to High Hrothgar again, do the Peace Council, and get permission from the Jarl to summon Odahviing. I learn the shout to summon Odahviing. I go over to Whiterun, tell the Jarl I'm ready, and summon Odahviing. He gets trapped, tells me that he can fly me over to Skull Dolphin, so I immediately release him. I'm just saying, imagine being one of those guards. Like, you're risking your life to trap a dragon, and the person who told you to trap the dragon, 5 seconds after the dragon's trap, runs over and releases the dragon. But regardless, that's what happened. And I fly over to Skull Dolphin and run by most of the enemies, run into the first room. I actually fight most of the enemies. I don't fight all of them, but I fight most of the enemies as I'm running through the dungeon, doing the puzzles. I then get outside where I do just ignore all the enemies. I do try to fight the dragon priest for a little bit, but then I realize it's highly ineffective. So I just ran by and jumped into the portal. So I then, now that I'm in Sovngarde, run by all the things and get to the guy that we need to fight in order to enter the Hall of Valor. Now, that guy was actually way more difficult than I was expecting. So his attacks could kill me in 2 hits. So my original plan was just run up to him, attack him, and then whenever he hits me, to heal. But after a bit, I realized that my heavy armor skill actually got high enough up in all of the fights that if I try to fight this guy, my heavy armor skill levels up. So I had to unequip my helmet, and then I realized that if I don't have my helmet on, he actually kills me in 1 hit. So what I realized that what I needed to do was actually run away from him and use my fire breath shout whenever it recharged in order to kill him. But I did successfully do that, defeated him, and entered the Hall of Valor. In the Hall of Valor, I stole all of their food. I stole 3 tables worth of feasts. I don't even think I used most of it. But I talked to the people, we learned we need to fight Alduin, we clear the fog, and Alduin flies down, I trap him with Dragonrend, and then just start swinging at him. I then use food whenever I'm low, and we defeat Alduin. I go back to Mundus. So this challenge was surprisingly easy and surprisingly fast. Really, the biggest problem was trying to deal with moments that tried to level up your speech. But despite that, it was still pretty easy. I was pretty much 100% sure before that this challenge was possible because of the shouts only challenge being possible. And the shouts only challenge was pretty much this challenge, but I could use armor, but I couldn't use my better form of attacks. So yeah, I also have food is completely underrated in Skyrim because while pretty much potions can do anything food can do but better, you can find a lot of free food just anywhere. And so you can actually get a lot more food than you can get potions. So rating this, in terms of fun, I would rate this like a 7 out of 10. Like this was not a bad challenge to try to do. In terms of difficulty, this would be like 6 out of 10. It was not a hard challenge. It sounds like it's going to be a lot harder than it is. But really, as long as you have picked up all the food, you can just spam that. And you won't face any actual troubles because you can attack constantly, unlike in the Shouts Only challenge. I'm going to always compare these challenges to Shouts Only because that one was concerning. In terms of time consumingness, I would rate this like a 5.5. I would say that this was less time consuming than the Pokemon challenge because it didn't need to like power level skill. On the other hand, it did require like more attempts than like a regular Skyrim might take. Yeah, I would rate this a 5.5 out of 10. That's it. Signing off for hopefully not the last time. Someone who is never on topic. Future me here has realized I forgot to actually say what the order would be. So I would probably rate this above both the Pokemon challenge and the Shouts Only challenge in terms of how much I think you should do it. Like, it's a more interesting challenge in both of those, and it's a lot more fun to try to do it. Anyways, that's all. Signing off for real this time. Bye.